So we're going to start. I'll do an introduction for the panel, and then we can just do the small quick intro, everyone. What we do and how we all got into animation, just introduction and how we all got into animation. Aside from me, I'm just a consumer.
We need you.
I can draw stick figures, and my son is very impressed. Okay, cool. So let me just start. Welcome to COM-eCON Africa. I'd like to thank everyone on the panel who's been able to make time. And we'll do a quick introduction of the animators. We have a panel for animation, United Nations of Animations, for African creators, for African audiences. So we'll start with Mucia. Please introduce yourself. We'll start with the ladies, Mucia, and then we'll go to Samia, and then Nick, and then Dennis. Please introduce yourselves and also how you got into animation.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for having me. So I'm pleased to attend the COM-eCON. And yeah, so I'm Mucia. I launched my company in 2019. It's Mucia Aram Company, a production and distribution company focusing on African animation. And I'm also part of African Animation Network. I'm the head of acquisition and distribution of the channel. So I came in the animation industry 17 years ago. I started in the Japanese anime. Doing the distribution of this content. So, and then I decided to change because I realized that we are missing content that are different and that are beautiful, with beautiful stories that we know how to make in Africa. So that's why I decided to target Africa, and also because I'm from Morocco, where I was born. Now I'm based in France, and I can't wait to see all our beautiful animation all over the world. So thank you again.
Thank you. Samia, please.
Thank you for the invitation. Thank you for COM-eCON. I am pleased also to be with you in this panel. I am Samia Shalvi, university teacher. I am from Tunisia in innovative technology. Also, I am the founder of the first school, 3D NetInfo, the first school of animation and 3D in French-speaking Africa. I have a profile that is a merge between technology and artistic, and I try by my position as educator, and also I'm president of Tunisian Creative Technology Association, to impact education, to impact industry, to impact all society and innovator with animation. And I believe that animation can be the universal language that can help all Africa and all the world to be always connected, and animation for connecting the mindset. And I am working with my partners in actually in 10 sub-Saharan African countries to make this happen, to impact via new technology, via video game and animation, to impact the industry and to make this industry happen in Africa.
Awesome, thank you. Nick?
Yeah, hi there, Tom. Thanks for coordinating this. Hello, everyone at COM-eCON. The East African creative community. My name is Nick Wilson. I'm the founder and CEO of the African Animation Network, which is a pro-profit, talent-driven social enterprise. How I got into animation was kind of circuitous. When I finished studying, or at least when I finished high school, my parents had a disagreement about what I should study as a career. My father wanted me to go into IT, and as the top art student at my school, my mother wanted me to pursue my passion in creativity. Anyway, Mom ended up putting me into this animation diploma course, and I finished it. I then went to university. I was studying biotechnology. About 6 months, I don't think I even lasted 6 months, maybe 3 months into the course, I decided, this wasn't for me. So I dropped out, and I started an events company, and we threw parties. And then when I was about 23 years old, I studied multimedia. Again, ahead of the curve. So when I finished my animation course, there wasn't really an animation industry in South Africa, or Africa for that matter. So I then went on to study multimedia. And when I finished that course, there actually really wasn't many career options available once I had qualified. So I went into traditional media. I worked in the printing industry for almost 10 years, consulting to big commercial printers, setting up, workflows and optimizing factories. And I used to go for training in Europe to Kodak and to several different German print manufacturer suppliers. And they used to take me to like their flagship print factories. And people were really struggling to make a profit because digital technologies and platforms started impacting on print volumes. And I looked at the situation in Europe, knowing that, within 5 years, this would happen in Africa and South Africa. And I looked at, the whole supply chain of print manufacture, and I thought about my studies in animation. And I went, well, this manufacture process is almost identical. And so what I did was I started investing what spare money I had into my own development studio. And I contacted one of my best friends. I've known him since I was 10 years old. In actual fact, he was the first black kid allowed into our all-white school. Even before the end of apartheid, it was like 1991. Trevor Gumbi, he went on to become one of South Africa's top comedians. Anyway, I contacted him and I said, I have this cool idea about, kind of creating an African South Park. And he was like, oh, man, I'm on board. And so he and I and another comedian friend of mine, Nina Hasty, our head writer, Steve Plummer, created this this IP called My Child Teenage Mutant Azanians, which is basically premised on Professor Afronaut. Think like Elon Musk or Mark Shuttleworth, who is a maniacal scientist, and he has the space tourism program, and he sends Africa's top celebrities and politicians on maiden voyage of this space tourism program. And while they are in flight, Julius Malema, who's a very controversial South African politician, he goes into stowage and he finds a monkey in a cage, and he lets this monkey loose, and the monkey bites the nuclear stabilizer on the spacecraft, and there's a huge atomic explosion. And all these politicians and celebrities are cross-mutated with cute furry animals, and they find themselves, when they return to Earth, kind of viewed as abominations of society, and they are banished to the land of Azania, where they attend Nelson Mandela School for Gifted Mutants. So it's kind of like South Park meets South Park meets who's the writer? Animal Farm. Apologies, I messed that up. So yeah, South Park sliced with Animal Farm. And we self-funded a pilot. through blood, sweat, and tears. And we eventually convinced Cartoon Network Africa to broadcast it. We actually debuted it at the Comedy Central International Comedy Festival, and then it was broadcast on Comedy Central Africa. That represented the first half hour of adult animated comedy we produced for and broadcast to an African audience. And then we were negotiating pre-sales with a company in Europe and a company in Africa. And that company restructured all of their international operations, and the people that I was dealing with were basically laid off. And, you know, when you put so much energy and resources and capital into something, it doesn't work out, it forces you to reassess what you do. And we were talking off air a little bit earlier about South Africa being one of the most unequal countries in the world. And as a white person, I'm closer to privilege and capital. And I looked at the situation and I thought, well, if it is so difficult for me to do this, considering my privilege, then it's going to be super difficult for people from disadvantaged communities. And that was the inspiration behind the African Animation Network, was to empower African animation professionals.
Yay for moms.
Yeah. My dad has subsequently come around and, you know, understood that it was probably better for him to have supported my dreams. At the same time, there wasn't an industry, so I could understand why he was reluctant. Absolutely, yay for moms.
I will admit, my wife ends up being more right than I am. So.
So is mine. I don't argue. You know.
We made the decision together. I was bulldozed, but we made the decision together when everything goes right. Cool, awesome. Thank you. Dennis, please introduce yourself and how you got into animation now in game development, but tell us about yourself.
I should have gone first, but okay. I mean, before Nick. Anyway, so my name is Dennis Mucia. I am a game designer and animator, and also currently the treasurer of the Association of Animation Artists. I am also an educator. I teach game development and animation at Africa Digital Media Institute. I've been teaching this for 8 years, and yeah, just recently been transitioning into the world of games. And how I came into getting to do animation was I learned about games being, the first time I played a game was probably in some point in the 90s, and it stuck. The first game I played was Resident Evil on a PS1, and I was like, whoa, what is this? Like, what? No, PS2, sorry. And I was like, this is different. This is crazy. Why is this nemesis all over my place? I can't tell when he's coming in. How do I fight this guy? It was all frightening and scary. But from that point is I had to now start transitioning and getting to see, okay, with this, is this something that you can actually do?
So we'll move into quickly, especially so we are in Africa. I think especially so we are very let me say the economies, the economies, the countries, the industries, we are fairly young compared to, let's say, Europe. If it's Europe, if it's America, if it's Japan, in terms of that, the industries having advanced so much. I think I was looking at a film like how they were doing animation at Disney in like 1940s or 40s or 50s. Like, wow, we weren't even there as a country. So in terms of, especially so in Africa, maybe we'll start with the lady. Samia has unfortunately dropped off. what are the challenges especially you faced getting into the industry, and how did you overcome it? We've kind of mentioned a bit, I think Nick has also mentioned, but what challenges did you face when you're getting into the animation industry, and how did you overcome it to where you are, and hopefully just how far are you looking at getting it? And first and foremost, let me say it's pretty impressive that you're in anime. I'm an anime fan, so that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, to be honest with you, I've been very lucky because I had connections in the anime industry. So this is how I started and why I started there, because I had someone that I know that offered me the internship. It was in San Francisco in 2003. So I went there just to improve my English. I had no clue what is Japanese anime, how to do the business, what is distribution. So I went there just to improve my English. And then I realized that there's a whole industry behind the animation. I didn't know that we were selling to TV, and by this time it was DVD, and also the merchandising, how it worked, the manga, the publishing. So I've learned everything when I was there, and it was a great opportunity for me. But I was lucky because I had the great connection. So it's really helpful when you know people who can help you. And I decided to start very low. By this I already had experiences in the industry at the beginning, and I and learning. And I was really lucky because this company, it was by this time it was Showpro Entertainment. Now it's called Viz Media, and they gave me this opportunity, and they were very open-minded. They learned me a lot. But then they asked me to do things, and they say, okay, you can do it, go for it. And I'm like, oh, okay. I was very shy by this time, and I was very scared. I was, really? And they put me in, they took me with them to the, what's the name? The New York Toy Fair. So I went with them, and I was working for them as an assistant. So I was planning all the meetings to them. And some guy came, I have a meeting with Mucia. And my boss told me, yeah, there's someone who has a meeting with you. And I said, no, that's a mistake. It's with you. It's not with me. No, I'm an intern. So he said, no. He said, Mucia. And I said, okay. And he said, go do the meeting. And you know how to do it. You saw us doing, so do it. And I was very scared and nervous. I was shaking. I was like, but they were all watching me. And I managed to do the meeting because I've seen what they were doing, how they pitched the animation. So I was just repeating what I was seeing.
Allow us to move to Nick. Nick, tell us your challenges. Who did you have to fight to get to where you are?
That's quite a broad question. And I think you said it a little bit earlier, Tom, like we're at almost ground zero of this industry in Africa. So everything that we're doing is brand new. It hasn't been tested. It's completely fresh. And, if you're kind of pioneering an industry, a new market, there's like tons of challenges. I think let's talk about the challenges to building a sustainable animation industry across the continent. And at the African Animation Network, we've identified 3 key pillars. There's actually 4, but let's start with the first 3. So the first is talent identification and skills development. The second is revenue generating access to audience. And once you have those 2 ingredients in place, the third pillar comes into play, and that's investment. Because there's higher potential for a return on investment once you've got skills and you've got the possibility of revenue generation and profitability. And at the African Animation Network, we've kind of looked at the entire value chain of the animation industry and looked at ways that we can create interventions that can speed up development. And we call these things open network platforms. And so if you go to our website, africananimation.net/open network platforms, you'll see like, I don't know, 10 or 15 different interventions that we've started, which range from, running Animation du Monde in partnership with Annecy, which feeds into the MIFA pitches in terms of skills development. We've run a mobile SVOD channel, and with Mucia's help, we're now going into a proof of concept phase for a linear TV channel. And we're trying to accelerate this narrative and this discussion around opportunities for investment in African animation. The fourth pillar to sustainability is ownership and equity. And we worked on that model for quite a while, and we need to update our website. As an example, Ridwan Mashud, that won Cartoon Network's Creative Lab, we actually the joint venture with Baboon Animation in New York, which is arguably the #1 animation development studio in the world, outside the big major studios, of course, but most of their team actually work for the major studios. They've won 27 Emmy Awards collectively and numerous Oscar nominations. We brought Baboon into these discussions. Mike Desev came to a judge and a mentor at Animation du Monde for the previous 2 years. He was like blown away by raw talent, individuals that have been self-taught. Ridwan taught himself animation by watching YouTube videos.
Yeah.
And we joint ventured with Ridwan to create an opportunity that arguably wasn't there without the expertise of a company like Baboon. Those for me are the major hurdles: skills development, access to audience, investment, and then once we've got all of those ingredients, it's about taking original African IP and amplifying that voice, making sure that the creators of those shows are represented in the value chain, that they make decent revenues out of it. There was a recent BBC article where they did like an overview of the African animation industry. And they, of course, interviewed Ridwan. And this will probably sound counterintuitive. The really top talents that we keep finding around Africa are self-taught. And it's probably because they're so self-motivated and passionate about their crafts that it separates them from other individuals globally that might have a formal education. So as much as there are these hurdles, there are means to overcome them in really exciting ways. I think MakerBolt's Ami is also self-taught. She did a degree in engineering.
A lot of engineers getting into anime.
And MakerBolt is an amazing project. She won the continental finals of Animation du Monde and went and represented her project at Annecy. There again, another example of this like melting pot of incredible talent that have turned these obstacles into opportunity. So there's huge hurdles. We have challenges with internet, challenges with electricity, like name them, Africa has them. For me, what's really exciting is how we meet those challenges and how we overcome them. And there's lots of examples of that. So yeah, I don't want to like dwell on the doom and gloom. I think we're in a really exciting place on the continent in terms of our industry.
I like the opportunities that lay in place. Maybe also just as a pointer, Dennis can also weigh in just a little bit as we finalize on that part. Is could it be also even just could it be, especially as Africa? I think Mona mentioned it earlier, especially when you're thinking down the value chain of the content that you're making. It's not just an animation, it's how do you turn it into merchandise, a t-shirt, a sweater, a hoodie, a bag. I think even as Africa, from a point of, I think we look at it especially so from a consumer perspective, where we are told cartoons, like when you say cartoons, someone thinks, yeah, those are for kids, you're grown up, why are you watching cartoons? But like as seen here, it's not kids who actually make it. It's grown-ups who make it. And by the time your kid is watching a cartoon, it is maybe, yes, for kids, but you've bought him a towel for, if it's my son loves McQueen a lot. Let's say you bought him a towel for McQueen, or SpongeBob, or a bag, or a bag for going to school for this, or a bottle of water. So by the time they have enjoyed it, it was just a gateway for it, but it's thinking the business behind it, of it's not just children. They're targeting your wallet. So how maybe do we even turn that perception of the parent saying, be an engineer for Dennis, or I did physics, but I was binging on Cartoon Network and, and Boondocks when they were coming out. So how do we even maybe, as perception-wise, for the guardians who actually pay the school fees for education? That's also maybe one of the hurdles, like education for guys that you mentioned. For people, Dennis maybe can weigh in, especially when you were studying, your journey for your animation story, like just a quick way, quickly, just what you went through, and how can we even just turn that perception for it's not for kids, it is for kids, but not created by kids.
Okay. So having one of the coolest teachers ever, that was the biggest thing. That was the biggest thing, first of all, whereby I ended up having guys who have worked on a product that people have interacted with, which is now Tinga Tinga Tales. So the unique process at which the school decided to go by was the direction of teaching you as if you're going to actually work with them in future, like in the next at the end of your training, we are just going to inculcate you into the studio, and then we just start on the next project. That was the idea and the mindset at that time. And it was interesting how for the first time I felt I did not feel stigmatized, because you're coming into class and the first thing that the teacher is doing is actually showing you an animation. Like, okay, here for the next 10 minutes, we are watching an animation. You're like, yo, how cool is that? Where it from our lectures of, sleeping on the job and, dividing land of your ancestors to the different people as you sleep in class. Just
to explain it to me, and wedding land is like when you're nodding.
when you're sleeping and then you're just nodding, that's just dividing
Yeah,
dividing land.
dividing land.
because of how boring the lectures would be. And here you are being entertained, and you're like, no, let's look at this. And I think at that time we had Merry Madagascar that had been out that we used a lot. We used the B movie as references, the Ants movie as references, Ant Bully also, and getting to see whoa. And then also using some of the getting to see the Tinga Tinga way of production, because it's the same way we have been shown. And then during now at the end of the course is when now we had our parents come in and get to see like what our products were. That was, it was kind of eye opening, because that's when they got to see a bit of the process. And also through the other Gesi initiative that I mentioned earlier, at the end of it, it was a big deal. We had people from what is this? What are they called? We had guys coming in from the embassies to um, uh, studio guys who own some studios, to local artists, other animators finally getting out of the woodwork and coming and we are getting to meet with them and interact with them, and you at that time are showing what you have been doing for the a couple of months of high impact and intense training. So during those sessions is when you're getting to see all these dignitaries coming in, and then that's when your parents are like, oh wait, okay, there are serious people who are coming and getting to see, so maybe there is something here. And then eventually having to see some of your adverts getting onto the TV, that's when they're like, oh yeah, that's my son. Yeah, he did that advert. Yes, now that becomes a big deal, because it was interesting when at one point I met a client, and we happened to meet at a restaurant, and I was trying to explain a concept to him, and then in the midst of it, I get to see an advert that I had just done a few weeks back running on the telly. Then I was like, yeah, that's what I meant. It's exactly like that. So that was so cool. And eventually now, yeah, my parents also are really happy and getting to see that. So now it started changing the narrative within the people who are just within my circles, and they get to see the actual product and get to realize it's that this is something that has been created by somebody that I know. Oh wow, and he's making money. Oh wow, and he's having fun while at it, or so we think, because it's it's some serious labor and number of days. Hmm.
And client budgets.
Yes, and tight budgets. Now that you've brought that up, now you had mentioned about some of the challenges. Most of the times, just as it is, even as you're dealing with parents, remember the people who are owning most of the big industries within the country. At least I can say for Kenya, but I should think it's the same thing happening in Tanzania and Uganda. You would find that it's mostly the older people who are in the CEOs and the decision makers of them. Now, a marketing person is coming up with an idea of making an animation so that it can capture the audience that they need. You have to convince that, one, this is not a child activity that is being done. So you're addressing a parent, first of all, and his notion on cartoons being for kids. And the second thing is that you're managing a CEO who's a parent who needs to accept the fact that no, this is actually a trend, that things that are there. So and for those ones who have a good leap of faith and have a strong support from probably other people who would overcome the decision that the person would be having, that CEO would be having, then at this particular time, that's when they get to see, oh, it actually makes sense, from them refusing it to work, and then eventually getting through, the animation slipping through the cracks, then it gets done, and then it's produced, and then all of a sudden the outputs that they were looking for becomes a big deal. Then now it makes sense. A very good example of this is fiber. At least in Kenya, the Kenyan
That
territory,
grabbed,
this is very
that
well
grabbed the
known.
attention. That grabbed the nation's attention. But please
And
continue.
Yeah, it completely changed, caught their attention. And even before that, there was still there were two other series that Michael was working on before he landed the fiber one, and they were amazing, and they were on the internet, and they were good. They were really good stories. They were entertaining, and all. But eventually, here we are, and fiber breaks the internet, and then after fiber breaks the internet, Masgwembe comes in and breaks the internet also, and then
We need to
disappears.
explain to Nick.
Oh wow.
Fiber was an advert for an ISB provider in Kenya, done by Animations, and that really grabbed people's attention. Same thing with Mazgwembe. Mazgwembe was also done for telco. He's a character. He was animated for a telco. But even as you mentioned that, I want us just continue with it. You've mentioned you're kind of talking on one layer of for the guy who's coming in, for the parent who's checking this out, for the young guy who's checking this out, where's the money? So you're kind of touching on especially the commercial aspect of it. So like, could just continue. Where's the money in animation? And also Nick and Munya can break down. Nick threw some heavy words on talent gaps and acquisitions and global distributions. Maybe we can just break it down to bite-sized chunks. So just also just continue with the trail of thought on advertisement and also kind of what's the money in animation as you're continuing with the conversation.
Okay, thanks. So the next thing that when you get to see people spending this kind of money into their marketing strategies, then that tells you, oh, people want eyeballs. So how do you get eyeballs? So then the first thing is to get some catchy kind of way of marketing, and getting mascots and building your own IP that would make sense, that somebody treating a character like it's your own like if it's my own IP, that somebody can come
What is IP?
intellectual property, sorry. And intellectual property is anything that you create, yeah, and it's on a tangible medium, that becomes IP, intellectual property, and it's owned by the person who created it. So if I was to come up with a cartoon, a stick figure, okay, not a stick figure, it has to be more than a stick figure. It has to have an expression that is unique to it. So if I was to end up drawing Thomas right now, yes, it looks like his image and likeness, but probably I could tweak a few things, make him have longer ears and a smaller nose, and then it
Ah,
becomes something completely different. Then now it becomes mine. And
so
now,
the stick figures I'm drawing for my son, I can't own that.
nah, everybody can do that. This is yeah.
Okay.
Um, so when I have now something that is very unique and then ends up looking something totally different, then now and then it belongs to me. Then I make an animation out of it, and then probably it becomes a big hit and people love it and they want it and they keep on watching it. Then at that time, I can use that to uh, um, let's see, another not I don't want to use that telco. Um, um, a, a food company decides, oh, we want to promote one of our products, some biscuits, and whoa, yeah, this guy's animation kind of looks like it. Now they can hire out my character to be
Yeah.
the advert, to do to do an advert for them, and then they can end up deciding, why don't we buy buy the actor. So that's one way. And then additionally, you can also be given a chance to come up with the um, what is it called, a unique mascot that can be for someone, and then you be paid for that on by itself, and then you go on out and develop a lot more of their products and animations that they can be able to use. So the money, if I may summarize, is one, when you have your own IP, you can be able to create stories and use it for advertisements and bring in other people on board. And then two is just be doing animation as a service, letting people come to you, tell you, I want you to design this, I want you to make this animation, and then they can be able to pay you for that. And that's just on a summary basis. Then I'll allow Monia and Nick to probably tackle what I may have.
So Monia, you were talking, just coming back to the thought of distribution. I'm interested in getting into animation. I want my animation to be everywhere in everyone's eyeballs, getting to be seen. I'm trying to find the words. Can you break it down to especially the angle of distribution? Where's the money in it? I'm a parent, my kid is into it, thinks he has the next SpongeBob cartoon story. How does he or she get it now to people's eyeballs other than just uploading it on his or her YouTube channel?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a whole industry behind the animation. So it's not only distribution to the broadcasters. This is part of the business that we make. I mean, distribution to broadcasters means you sell the rights of the IP. So what is IP? Can you tell me, Thomas? Now you know.
Property. I have intellectual property, but not my stick.
So
now I know.
You sell the rights to broadcast your content to the broadcasters everywhere. So, for example, I sell the rights of Makeables to, let's say, Netflix. So they pay to have the rights to broadcast it on their platform. Or I sell it to a TV broadcaster. They pay, and they pay for a certain period of time. And so that means that I can sell it to, and for certain countries as well. So that means that I can sell it to other countries and to other, after the rights are expired, I can sell it again to another broadcaster. So this is I don't want to go into details, but this is where we can make money in terms of distribution. But aside of that, what I've learned from my first experience in Japanese anime is that we talk about IP on purpose because it's not only something to be broadcasted. It's not only a cartoon. It's an entire brand that we are selling. You were mentioning I was also mentioning the merchandising that is coming out of it. It's an entire business. So from makeables, we can make caps. I see caps behind you. We can make mugs. We can make backpacks for the kids, pens, everything. Everything can be sold, and you see that when you have a kid. You see that when you go to the supermarkets. You see all the brands over there, and so it's not only cartoons that you see on the screen. It's everywhere. It needs to be everywhere. It's an entire business.
Mm-hmm.
And then, yeah, sorry.
Sorry, continue.
Yeah, then there's also the what do you say? What I was sorry. So the merchandising is strong, and then you build the awareness around this intellectual property, because people, even the kids, they see it everywhere, so they want to see it on the screen. Or the other way around, they see it on the screen and they want to have it at home. They want to have it and show it to the kids at school. They want to have the backpack. And so this is a very big machine that we have, big business behind the cartoons.
If I may ask, you had mentioned co-production.
Yeah.
So how do you even get to a level where I'm trying to create my own stuff? I think you even just mentioned we are starting. So you get the creator he's writing the script, he's designing the characters, he's animating it, or she is doing all the work. How do you even kindly break down to us the need for co-production for someone who's looking to get into it, in terms of maybe capacity? When does someone need co-production for, let's say, the content they're trying to make, especially when they're looking at the distribution end in putting their content out there?
Yeah, I was mentioning co-production because I see the potential in the international market, and to make it international, we need to collaborate with the international producers, because they have they know the standards of the broadcasters, and they also can bring some money that we cannot find in Africa. at the moment, because they have some subventions. For example, in France, we have good helps for the production. So when I take a project, I take it early stage. You know, I take it with the Bible that summarize all the details of the cartoons, and also the, if possible, the trailer. And this is what I take to the producer to pitch it to him. And if we have a script, I mean, that's not mandatory, because the script can be written together with the co-producer. Because even though you have written a script, they will have to be redone. There will be some work to do together to make it international. But to be more precise, I want to keep the DNA, the African DNA, in the story. Even
yeah.
though,
Does it get lost? Actually, that's a very good point. Does it get lost in terms of the look, the feel?
no, I mean, there's no way we lose the DNA of the African stories, African characters, but we can make it. I mean, let's say, because we have some standards in the international market. If you want it to be broadcasted outside Africa or in Africa as well, you have to respect the standards. And sometimes with the infrastructure we have in Africa, we have small studios. I mean, if we were ready to have a co-production in Africa with different countries, that would be great, but we are not ready right now at the moment, to be realistic. So that's why we are talking to producers outside Africa. But the main idea is to stick to the African DNA for sure. But we won't change the color of the characters for sure.
Just a question on it before I move on to Nick. In terms of, let's say you're creating content, you want to distribute it to a different market. I know anime, they'll have it in Japanese. So are you looking at maybe doing something in local languages and then they're subbed, or the voiceovers will just be directly into, if it's French, it's done in French directly?
Yeah, they will do some dubbing, yeah. I mean, if there's a project already produced, for sure we'll need to do the localization in each languages. But this is another step. When I find a broadcaster, for example, in France, I will need the French dubbing for sure.
Cool, interesting. Thank you. That's pretty good insight, especially in distribution internationally. Nick, especially coming from talent building, you'd mentioned just the gap in guys getting their skill to that level. You'd mentioned Baboon Animation, who are very big, very big. In the area of earning from animation, how do you think we can address this very important urgent? Because, you know, when you're saying you're an engineer, we know there's money there. There's no question. You're saying you're a pilot, we know the checks are coming in. Now, in the context of animation, especially coming from AN, how do we address that notion?
You know, it's actually at a crossroads right now. It's something that we at AAN, in partnership with Mucia company, is market access. So currently, African broadcasters are not incentivized to invest in African animation because they can license content from around the world at a fraction of the cost that we can produce per minute, because those titles have made their money back in their home territories. So in terms of being able to build a sustainable industry, we need market access. You know, we need to be able to find audiences for African IP and be able to monetize that. Dennis and Mucia have given you kind of the whole value chain of possibilities there. I'd like to add one other possibility, and that's looking at impact investment in the NGO space, especially for education. I've seen a number of studios make a huge success out of doing educational content in terms of numeracy, health literacy, et cetera, et cetera. And the perfect example of that is Ubongo in Tanzania, who've built out a great studio, which is operating Pan-Africa. I think they reach an audience of about 17 million people. And they're tackling the education issue in Africa. So there's a lot of different potential pots of money that we can look at in terms of building out sustainability. It really is about finding what matches your content and your goals, and like Mucia said, the DNA of your show to the investors. I would like to kind of stress that co-production is, quite a big buzzword in not only animation, but global TV and film at the moment, because governments are actively incentivizing co-production through co-production treaties. And if I'm not mistaken, South Africa and Kenya have a memorandum of understanding in terms of a co-production treaty, which would arguably be the first African co-production treaty. Outside of that, I don't think there's a lot of co-production happening between African countries, and I would like to see more of that. I really think that's the biggest potential across the continent, is for us to more actively pursue co-production. And we don't necessarily have to do it through co-production treaties and government interventions with tax credits and grants and rebates. I think we can do it on our own steam. There's great opportunities for collaboration, and give you a perfect example. L'Abe et Amcest. I hope I didn't murder that, Mucia. By Ingrid Agbo from Togo. That's a perfect example of co-production or Pan-African collaboration. So Ingrid is Togolese. She's based in Paris at the moment. Her creative team is in Burkina Faso, and she's been working with studios in Reunion, Madagascar, Nigeria. That's really exciting, and that's a lot of what the African Animation Network has been trying to promote, is that Pan-African collaboration, because I really see a lot of value in that. If you consider how expensive animation is to produce, for us to make a return on those IPs, I think we have to be distributing it, maybe not internationally, but Pan-Africa. I know that's internationally, but across African markets, we don't do that enough, and I'd really like to see that happen more often. And I think that's really where the biggest potential opportunity for sustainability is. Mucia, maybe you've got something to say on that, because I know you're passionate about this.
Maybe just a question before we go to Mucia. Just a question, because you made a very good point. Why pay for an original in Africa when I'll get something very cheap, SpongeBob? Or I'm not saying SpongeBob is cheap, but it's been there forever. So they're not really looking for premium pricing right now. Can be any other animation. Why take an African content? I am a free-to-air channel in Africa. I'm being given a very easy deal with an international content that will still sell. How can we even overcome that? That hurdle? Maybe in your opinion, doesn't have to be the solid truth on this is how it will happen, but just how do you even overcome that? And then also too, sorry, on the second one, it slipped slipped my mind. Let me just see if we can address that, and then how do you overcome that challenge? Because I'm getting something cheap, why pay for an original?
I've been in that situation. With my child, that's exactly the conversation that I was having with forecasters. Is like, why would we ever do a pre-sale in your show when we can license a whole episode of a premium TV series for the cost that you can produce 1 minute of animation? I think we need to, as a community, break that, or at least change that narrative. And we're going into a proof of concept phase for our own TV channel, which will create market access for African brands. And as those African brands develop and reach significant audience across the continent, there's an opportunity to monetize that content and generate profits. There's also the opportunity for us to distribute that content internationally and look at the African diaspora. There's really big African communities in countries like France and the United States and Brazil, where those African communities are minorities and they don't have representation in content kids are consuming. And I think we can create value out of that. Baby steps, but I think we're moving into a space where the possibilities are a lot more tangible than they were maybe even 2-3 years ago. I hope I answered your question there, Tom.
In a sense, yes, but still, I'm trying to think. Let's say, like, even the most notable, I'm sure most people will know, the football sheikhs,
super strikers,
yeah. So they've been very successful in doing it, but ultimately they were bought out. So is that like the most lowest hanging fruit? It's hard, but it's not easy. Like, is that like the closest thing we can have in pulling that Pan-African reach?
Well, yeah. Well, look, that they have a pretty phenomenal business model. They looked at branded entertainment. I think they launched in 2006 when South Africa was bidding for the 2010 World Cup. And so they were like perfectly positioned to take advantage of that groundswell around football in Africa. And they had been distributing their comic book as an insert in South African newspapers.
Into Kenya, yeah.
They have like a distribution run of like almost 1 million copies, which is the biggest comic book distribution per week in the world. And they then turned that into a branding opportunity for the likes of like Engine and KFC and really big brands that wanted to reach the target audience that was consuming Super Strikers content. And then they pivoted from a comic book into animation, and it's now distributed in like over 120 countries internationally, and they're on Disney, and it's pretty phenomenal what they've done. That is a really good example of kind of thinking outside of the box. There's opportunities in difficult markets that can create businesses and sustainability for those businesses, both in Africa and internationally.
Awesome. Thank you. I was hoping you'd drop a bomb on something you guys have, but we will wait for that when the time comes. Or are you going to drop it now?
There's a couple of bombs coming, Tom, and we've got some panels for Naiccon that we'll share in due course. I don't want to steal the thunder of what we've discussed today. I mean, it's really excellent what's been discussed. And thank you, Tom. Thank you, Dennis. Thank you, Mucia. It's been really great, talking about our passions.
Awesome. Thank you guys for coming. Thank you for everyone who's been patient enough to listen to all this. If you're a parent, please let your child do animation. If you're a dad, listen to the mom. If you are saying, let the kid be in animation. If you're a young man who's interested in animation or a young lady, feel free to do it. The opportunities are there. I think the animation industry is huge. It's humongous. And as mentioned, the numbers are in Africa to be able to sustain it and to make it into an industry that employs a lot of people. So thank you, Nick. Thank you, Mucia. Thank you, Dennis, for coming through. Again, thank you all for listening to this panel, Naiccon in partnership with African Animation Network. So see you guys, hopefully, in another panel or in another fireside chat, just talking about what AN is doing in the animation scene. I personally am very excited for this. Thank you all for coming through.